Is it live yet? Oh, it's live. Okay, so let's begin. Mm. All right, welcome back to our next live stream. And today we're going to cover about the World Bank, lectured by again our man of the hour, man of the hour, Prof. Jiang. And I truly believe that all the evilness that happens throughout the world, it always goes back to uh, wealth, and wealth is very closely tied to fiat currency and specifically gold. Fiat currency is human currency, and gold is God currency because gold are tangible. Fiat currency is just like a replacement for gold because not everybody allowed to own tangible gold. And I feel like if we really understand how the world banks work throughout the world, and we educate ourselves about how money really works and how it affected the world, I think that could give more awareness on why this war is waging upon us. Um so this would be one of the video that I think quite important to understand, because what pissed me off is we never thought about really how monies work when we were at school, and all the things that we were taught when we were at school or maybe college, that the closest thing is like math, arithmetic, like 1 plus 1, 2 divided by 2, and maybe a little advanced like accounting, and that's it. I never knew what fiat currency means until I graduated from school. How ignorant I am. And maybe my circle are wrong. Maybe I'm circling myself with the wrong people, for example, which I don't really care about how the world really works back then. But I'm telling you that the first time that I heard about fiat currency is after I graduated around like 25, 26 years old. And what happened to our education system, whereby that money is one of the most important thing, and we haven't been exposed like how the money really works and how the banks really works and how the tax really works. Why this is not taught in school, why this is not really heavily exposed in even college time, and this is alarming. And yet when we graduated and we start to land a job, uh, taxes, money, and banks, which is loan, is is one of the most important thing that we need to engage, uh, I would say, in a daily basis. But these haven't been exposed, like how really money works. And this itself shows that we are not being prioritized by someone to learn about how monies work. What this someone want us is only to spend money, to take loan, to pay taxes. And I feel I'm quite late in the game, but the second best day to educate myself and learn is today. The best time to learn is 10 years ago, but the next best time to educate myself from ignorant to educated is today. So let's begin by Prof. Jiang, Game Theory 6, The World Bank. Let's begin.
Today, I want to examine why you Chinese students behave the way you do. Okay? So believe it or not, but the way that you behave, the game that you're playing, it's strange, it's weird. So I'll point out 3 things that you do that don't really make any sense. The first thing that you do is you spend a lot of your time learning English. In fact, you probably spend more time learning English than you do learning Chinese. That's weird. And I've asked Chinese students before why they are so focused on learning English. And their answers usually are, I want to learn knowledge, I want to go abroad, I want to communicate, I want to use the internet. That's not really a good explanation, okay? So that's one thing that's weird. Second thing that's weird is you're obsessed with making money, especially US dollars. Okay, and the third thing that's weird is that your goal in life is to immigrate to a Western country, specifically the United States, right? You all want to go to the United States for college, get a degree, and hopefully stay there, get a good job. But as we discussed before, that's strange because you are much higher status in China. You're much more likely to get a good job. You're much more likely to marry a beautiful woman than you are in the United States, where the game is rigged against you. Okay, so this sort of behavior is weird. If you think about it, what you should be really trying to do is master Chinese. Because once you master Chinese, and given your family background, given the fact that your family is often wealthy and well connected in China, you can climb up pretty high in China, okay? So if you learn Chinese, you're far better able to communicate yourself. You're far more likely to gain respect and status in China, okay? But instead you learn English. US dollars doesn't make any sense. What you really want is status. Right? What you really want is to be well respected. You want a prestigious job. You want to marry a beautiful woman. You want to have lots and lots of children. That's what you really want. But instead, you're really focused on obtaining US dollars. That's kind of strange. Now, the last thing we said was immigration. If you go to the United States, it's really a rigged game against you, right? The most that you can hope to obtain is maybe become an engineer or professor if you're really, really smart, but you're not going to achieve political power. You're not going to become a CEO of a major company, all right? So the situation as it is, it's really weird where the best and brightest in China, they just want to be common people in the United States or Britain or Canada. So it's a really weird game. And so the question I want to look at today is, how was this game constructed? Why do we play this game? And the answer I will show you is because of the British. Okay? The British Empire created this game that ultimately the Americans inherit and which the entire world's played today because America is the global superpower. Okay, does that make sense? All right, so first I want to go into some history and explain to you how we got to where we are. So this is the map of the Spanish Empire at the height of its power. As you can see, the Spanish Empire covered the entire globe, okay? So this is a small nation in Spain, and it was able to really cover the entire world. So how was this accomplished? Okay, so the first thing you need to understand is that for most of its history, Europe was a very poor place. In order for it to obtain wealth, it had to trade with the world. Specifically, it wanted spices from what they call the East Indies, okay, Southeast Asia. At this time in history, the main power were the Muslims who are here, okay? And if you want to trade with East Asia, you have to go through the Muslims. And at this point in history, Spain is Muslim. It's a place called Andalusia. But then the Christians were able to reconquer Spain. And so the Muslims decided that, well, just blockade you. Or if you want to trade with us, we will charge you a lot of levies. Okay? And so now the Spanish and the Portuguese are forced to look for new routes to the East Indies, where the spices are. Remember, at this time in history, spices are the most valuable commodity. They're actually worth more than gold, okay? I'm talking about like cinnamon, nutmeg, peppercorn, okay? These spices are extremely valuable commodities. In fact, one ship, if you're able to bring one ship of these spices back to Europe, well, you had intergenerational wealth, okay? You become one of the wealthiest people in Europe. That's how valuable these spices were. And so now, the Spanish and the Portuguese have no choice but to discover new routes to the East Indies. So they went this way, and this is hard because Africa is not really hospitable. There are a lot of viruses, diseases in Africa. So they started to explore all around the world, and they went to North America and South America. And when they went to North and South America, they discovered that there were already peoples, the Aztecs, the Incas, living there. And they had a lot of wealth because these were empires, and they could be easily conquered. And so they set up these colonies all around South America, and a lot of silver was now being transported back to Spain. And so overnight, Spain became extremely wealthy. But as we discussed last class, if you become too wealthy and too powerful, you change as a people. Before you were energetic, you were open, you were cohesive. That's what made you an empire. But now because of all this wealth, you become insular. You become arrogant. And you become extremely close-minded. Okay, you become lazy. And so the Spanish, they had all this wealth, and they decided that they really didn't want to work anymore. Okay, so what happened? Well, what happened was that they started to subcontract their labor to other places. Okay, so now what's going to happen is you will have the rise of England, French, and the Dutch Republic mainly, okay, to provide textiles, luxury goods to Spain, all right? So how this was accomplished was first, industry. So the Spanish, because they were so wealthy, didn't want to work. And their people didn't have to work either, okay? So, but they wanted to buy clothes, nice clothes. So what happened was they got other nations to be their factories, including Britain, the Dutch Republic, and France, okay? That's the first thing. Second thing that happened was trade, okay? So the Spanish did engage in trade, but now that they're so wealthy, they could just hire the Dutch to do it, okay? Now the Dutch were responsible for going to the East Indies and bringing back the spices because it's a very dangerous job. Right? You could get sick, you could die along the way. You could also lose a lot of money. Okay? And the reason why the Dutch agreed to this is that the Dutch was basically a colony of the Spanish. So the Spanish had an empire, and the Dutch were part of this empire, so they just made the Dutch go do it for them. Okay? But the third thing that happened was piracy. Okay? So all this silver was being transported from the New World back to Spain. And what the English realized is, hey, we can just engage in piracy and steal this silver for ourselves. Okay? All right, so now the English became very wealthy because of piracy. Okay, and the most famous pirate of this time, of course, was Sir Francis Drake. And he worked directly under the monarch, Elizabeth I. Okay, so this was a state-sponsored piracy that made Britain very wealthy. Okay, so now you have this divergence where, okay, you have the Spanish Empire, and because of their wealth, they became lazy, insular, and arrogant, or the word we use is hubris. Okay, lazy is you just make others do it for you, okay? Insular just means that now, as we discussed last class, the Spanish aren't concerned about other nations. They think they're invincible, so they engage in court politics, okay? They're all infighting for the throne. The last thing is arrogant hubris, which basically means that you believe you are invincible. You can do whatever you want, and therefore you start all these wars against everyone, everywhere. You overextend yourself, and you don't really understand your limitations as an empire. So very quickly, even though Spain becomes very wealthy very fast, they also go bankrupt very fast because they're fighting too many wars, they're spending too much money that they don't have. Okay, and they're too corrupt. Okay, does that make sense? Now, and because of this, what's happening is that the British, England, the Dutch, and the French, they are slowly becoming a much more energetic, open, and cohesive society. Cohesion, okay? And now that you have this differentiation, what's going to happen is that their religion is going to change, okay? So Spain remains Catholic, and it's going to fight to control the Vatican. And this, okay? So that's what Spain does. Now, Britain and the Dutch need to differentiate themselves from Spain. And so they become Protestant, or we call Calvinist. Okay? So Catholic is really about obeying authority. But the Protestant, the Calvinist religion insists on hard work, on energy, on obtaining wealth. Okay? The problem, though, is that the Spanish are too powerful. And the French, some of them are Calvinist, but most are Catholic. Okay? So what's going to happen is that the English and the Dutch are going to decide to join forces. Okay? So I want to very quickly show you the difference between the Catholic religion and the Protestant religion. Okay? So these are the Spanish. And as you can see, there's a lot of trade going between the New World and Spain. Why is this the case? Because Spain is extracting resources from the New World, primarily silver. Okay? The French are also engaged in trade as well. So what they really want is fur from North America. So fur is considered a luxury at that time. But as you can see from this map, the people that are really engaged in trade, engaged in piracy, in trade, in shipping, are the British, okay, and the Dutch. And the reason why is that they're poor, okay? And so through this hard work, they become very wealthy very quickly. In fact, the Dutch, become the wealthiest nation in the world per capita. You have this burgeoning of the middle class. And so what happens now is that the Spanish and the Dutch come into conflict. Because remember, the Dutch are a colony of the Spanish. And so the Spaniards want the Dutch to pay more taxes, and the Dutch want to be more independent. So this starts a series of wars, okay? In fact, an entire series of wars starts throughout Europe called the 30 Years' War. Okay? So ostensibly, it's a religious conflict between the Protestants and the Catholics, but there are lots of there are other underlying factors as well. Okay? Another factor is the Spaniards want to exert control over the Dutch. Okay? And so there's lots of different reasons, but the main thing you need to know is that millions and millions of people die. In fact, it is the deadliest war in Europe right before, up until the World War I. Okay? And so this creates anxiety in Europe, because if there's all this war and you're generating all this wealth, how do you keep this wealth secure, right? You're a merchant, you became very wealthy through trade by going to the East Indies and getting spices and come back to Europe and selling them. But if the Spanish or the French are going to send an army and steal everything, how do you keep your gold safe? Okay? So what's going to happen is this. What's going to happen is that the British and the Dutch are going to decide to get married. Okay? This is what we call the Glorious Revolution. 1688 Glorious Revolution. So let's talk about the Glorious Revolution. In the Glorious Revolution, what happens is that the British nobility invite William of Orange, who is a leader of the Dutch Republic, to come and become the monarch of Britain. Okay? And so you're like, okay, why would they do that? Why would they betray their own king, James II, and install a foreign monarch, William of Orange? Okay? And so the thing you need to understand is that throughout British history, what makes Britain unique is that the monarch has always been in conflict with the nobility. Okay? The king has always been in conflict with the oligarchs. And this is a continuous pattern. So ostensibly, the reason is religious, because James II was Catholic and Britain is a Protestant country. But the real reason is the nobility want to exert authority over the country, okay? So in this agreement, what would happen is that Parliament becomes the sovereign state, okay? It becomes the de facto power in England. And the king, William Orange, agrees to be the puppet or the figurehead, but the real power is in Parliament. And so this creates the idea of national sovereignty. Okay? What people don't appreciate is that the real reason why they want to do that is they want to protect capital. Okay? Capital. Okay, or transnational. So the idea is that not only does William of Orange come over, but most of Dutch wealth come over. Because remember, at this time, the Dutch have a huge problem. They're constantly being invaded by Spain. So what you do is you take all the gold in the Dutch Republic and you transfer over it to England, okay? And so in 1694, they create something called a Bank of England. All right? And the Bank of England, the idea is this. The idea is that if you buy in the Bank of England, that gold is yours, okay? But the Bank of England will always be guaranteed by Parliament. All right, so this is a very important idea, guys. I need you to understand this for the rest of the semester, okay? So before, if you're a king and you need to go fight a war, you would borrow money from bankers and merchants, right? The problem, though, is that, one, you could lose the war, in which case, oops. Second is that you could die, in which case, oops. And the third problem is that you could just say, I'm king, I'm not going to give you back your money, okay? And so these merchants would have no choice but to try to create a revolution, okay? But as a merchant, as a capitalist, you don't want to go through this process. And so the Bank of England, it's really important because now you are lending money not to the king, but to the nation. Okay? What this means is that the nation has to pay you back. So even though the king dies, the people are liable for the debt. Okay, does that make sense? All right? So now, if you're a merchant, you feel safe. I can now put my money in the Bank of England. It's my money. If I lend it to the nation, I'm always guaranteed that they'll pay me back. Okay? And England is safe because, unlike the Dutch Republic, England is an island, and therefore it's protected by the Royal Navy. It's impossible for the French, the Habsburg Empire, or the Spanish to invade England. They've never been able to conquer England, and so it makes England safe, okay? All right? So now the question is, why would the Dutch, why would they put their money in England? Because remember, at this time, they can screw you over, okay? So the way around this is you have some old techniques. You have intermarriage, right? And then you have religion, or what we call secret societies. Because remember, both the Dutch Republic and England are Calvinists, okay? And the major secret society that facilitated trade, of course, were the Freemasons. But during this time, these two were really between aristocrats. And the Bank of England was trying to get as much money as possible, right? So what they started to develop was a new concept. It's not a new concept, but they really systemized it. It's called contract law. All right, so there's a famous British philosopher named John Locke. And he said that what is government for? Government provides the inalienable right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of property. All right? What that means is a government ensures you 3 rights. We will protect your safety. We'll make sure you won't die. Okay? We will make sure you have the right to do whatever you want, liberty, and also we will protect your private property. Okay? The entire purpose of Parliament and the courts, okay, the judicial system, is to ensure that your private property is protected, no matter where your private property came from. Okay? Doesn't matter. They don't care what the origin of private property is. Okay? So, like, if you're French and you killed 1 million people to steal 1 million gold, they don't care. It's yours. It's private. Okay? If it's and they believe that this private property comes from God. All right? This is yours because God willed it to be yours, and we, England, must protect it. And they will do so through Parliament and through the court system. Okay? Does that make sense? So now, if you're wealthy in Europe, you're now encouraged to go invest in England. Okay? And this creates a concept that today we call offshore financial center, or OFC. Okay, so think of like Dubai or Hong Kong, where they don't care where the money comes from. Okay? Their legal system, the financial
What's it called again?
system, where financial center, or OFC. Okay, so think of like Dubai or Hong Kong, where
Offshore financial center.
they don't care where the money comes from. Okay, their legal system, the financial system will help protect this money. Okay? Also Switzerland. Okay, so Switzerland is a classic example. But England create this, and they base their entire nation around this idea. Okay? Now, the first major test to the system was Napoleon, because Napoleon was about to conquer Europe. And England couldn't have that, because if Napoleon conquers Europe, then Napoleon could control all the wealth of Europe. He could make sure that no wealth is transferred over to England. He could basically blockade England. So what Britain did was they financed 7 wars against Napoleon.
Oh.
And they lost 6 of these wars. And they won the last war, which created the British Empire. Okay? So now Britain is
7 war, right?
global
7 war.
Napoleon. And they lost 6 of these wars. And they won the last war,
Okay.
which created the British Empire. Okay? So now Britain is a global financial empire. Okay, so this is the East India Company. Okay? And the East Indian Company, it's based in Britain, and like the Bank of England, it is private. And what it does is it primarily engages in trade with India, as well as the East Indies, okay? So what England will do is they will colonize India and steal all the wealth of India, primarily by deindustrializing India. So India had textile factories, but England, through a lot of policies just bankrupt the India textile industry and transfer it over to England, okay? So now what's going to happen is this. What's going to happen is that resources from resources from India, okay? Agricultural products, resources are going to transfer over to England. England is going to, with its factories, make goods for India. So basically, the entire deal is we, Britain, give you India $10, and India, you give $1,000, okay? So basically, we give you $1 for the goods you give us, and then you pay us $1,000 for the goods we give you, okay? So very quickly, this bankrupted England. But not only, this bankrupted India, okay? But not only that, but you also had China as well. And the same idea was the opium went into China, and then silver and money went back to England. Okay? And then this money was allowed to go over to the United States. And the United States industrialized very quickly because of this policy. Now, the question is, how was England able to do this? How was England able to create a system in which India and China basically voluntarily gave up its wealth? And the answer is, England set up a game that incentivized the local elites to cooperate with England. Okay? So this is the way, this is what happened. So this is a map of the British Empire. Okay? So let's look at India and China. The local elites had to help the British do this, okay? The local elites had to help the British steal. The question then is, why would the local elites do that, okay? And the reason why is, remember from last class, the local elites are in conflict with each other anyway, okay? And what they're looking for is more power. And so what England said to local elites is, if you help us, we will help you steal the gold from this country. Okay, do you understand? Before, if you were an elite and you lost a war or the people didn't like you, they could kill you. But now, if you help the British, you can transfer your wealth and your children abroad. Okay, does that make sense? So, now what's going to happen is that the elite are going to be able to send their children and their wealth to the British Empire, okay? Okay? And there are certain mechanisms that allow them to accomplish this. The first mechanism is, of course, finance. Okay? So, not only are you allowed to transfer your capital to the United Kingdom and its colonies, but they will disguise it for you. This is what we call money laundering, okay? Money laundering. So when you steal from your people, not only will Britain allow you to do this, but they will disguise it for you, okay? Through their offshore financial centers, including Hong Kong, Singapore, their lawyers will pretend that this money came from, not from drugs, not from gambling, not from prostitution, but from restaurants, from real estate. Who cares, okay? But they'll clean up for you, okay? We call this money laundering. And then they will help you send it overseas where it becomes legitimate, okay? So now you have real estate investments in Australia or Canada, okay?
Okay.
All right? So this is a global
Guys.
money laundering.
Oh my goodness, guys. It all makes sense though. It always stuck with me like I understood like what British is as a country, and I understand for a bit like what are the purpose of United States. From what I understood even today, that the British uh, it's tried to conquer new land, and for some reason it landed in America and killed all these Red Indians, and they established there and created a colony, and it is what it is today. But something stuck in my head, like, okay, it makes sense though, US, because it's just like across the, if I'm not mistaken, it's the Pacific Sea. So you guys can travel from the United Kingdom up to the South America. But something ponders me, like, what is Canada and Australia? And I haven't heard much about these two continents and how the white is establishing and what's the purpose. The thing that I knew about Australia is where they dump most of their prisoner. Okay, in detail, I'm not sure, but they dump a lot of prisoner in Australia. But Canada, I'm not really sure. What the heck is Canada? Uh, but what Prof. Jiang mentioned is really spot on. It's due to the money laundering, and it's because of this mass wealth. They need to clean it up. And as the wells go bigger, I mean, still, this is not a fact. This is just based on assumption, because if I want to claim this as a fact, I need to prepare with all the documentation, all the trace of document and everything, and lay out to you guys. But as an idea, it makes sense that as the wells become bigger, they couldn't just clean it up by opening a bakery shop, by open a what I call it, a hot dog stall, or laundry services. They couldn't, they could not maintain the large well and cleaning up to making these small stalls, and that's why they need to start invest or cleaning up in something bigger, like real estate. And that is when, based on what he said, that is why Canada and Australia was a thing. Wow. I don't know, guys. I'm not sure whether I can go back. I can. I mean, I don't know whether I can unsee what I see here. Let's keep going, guys. Let's keep going. We need to wake up.
Laundering system that encourages the local elites to be corrupt. Okay? It protects them in the corruption and it incentivizes them in their corruption. Okay? Does that make sense? The second thing that allows this to happen is schooling. Okay? So what do I mean by that? The British, when they conquered India and China, what they were trying to do is try to brainwash, indoctrinate the elite. So they set up these schools, right? And when you went to these schools, what did you learn? You learned English. But when you learn English, what do you learn? You learn that British culture is superior to your local culture, right? When you're learning English, you're learning about Shakespeare, you're learning about British philosophy, you're learning British history, and as a result, you slowly come to believe that the British are superior to us, and therefore I should try my best to be British, okay? And also, what's really important is that the schooling system allows for mobility, okay? So if you are a really smart person in China, well, there's really little mobility for you in China. But if you go for the British system, you might win a scholarship to go study at Oxford or Cambridge, okay? You even might become a Rhodes Scholar. So a Rhodes Scholar, it's basically a secret society, okay, guys? But the idea is that all over the British Empire, the very best students will be selected to go to Oxford, where they become best friends, okay? And their mission will be to spread the power of the British Empire all around the world. And it works really well, okay? And their mission will be to spread the power of the British Empire all around the world. And it works really well, okay? This is an indoctrination system for local elites. And it works really well because remember, if you're a really smart person, the British offer you more opportunities for mobility than your own country. Because in your own country, the system is very hierarchical. It's static. There's really no mobility, right? But if you're really smart and you obey the British and you believe that the British culture is the very best in the world, you might become a world scholar. And then you become part of the British Empire. Okay? And that's how the British were able to conquer the world. And the third thing, of course, is the Navy. Basically, the Navy ensured that Britain was the greatest military power in the world. If they didn't like you, they would come and destroy you, okay? That's what happened to China during the Opium Wars. There was nothing that could destroy the Navy. And so these three things, okay? Finance, the Bank of England basically, schooling, or the idea of soft power, British culture, English, okay? And the third thing is the Navy created really the world's first great world empire. So as you can see, Britain spread all around the world. Okay? And so even though the British Empire is no longer around, it's now the American Empire, even though the opium trade has stopped, what's important for us to understand is the game is still being played today. Okay? So let me give you an example of this. This is a drug trade in the world, okay? And as you can see, the drug trade, okay, primarily cocaine. We're talking about cocaine. There are other types of drugs as well, but let's focus on cocaine. You can see it's a global network. Just like a lot of cocaine is produced in Colombia and South America, and then it just travels all around the world. It's a very sophisticated system of trade, okay? But what you need to understand is none of this would be possible without the British financial and legal system, okay? Because like, why are people taking such a risk and selling drugs? Because it's so lucrative, it's so profitable. But you can only have this market if it's being protected by a legal and financial system, okay? People only participate in this trade. It's dangerous, but they will only participate in this trade if they can be guaranteed that they can make a lot of money, and they can use this money and protect this money, okay? So what protects this money, of course, is the offshore financial centers, okay? So the green are areas in the world in which you can place your money. They won't ask where the money came from. They don't care where the money came from, and they will clean it up for you, okay? Money laundering. They will use their sophisticated legal and financial systems to clean up your money, and then they will help you invest it elsewhere, okay? Does it make sense? So guess what? Look at this, guys. Where are the major global financial offshore centers? Well, they're in the Caribbean, okay? They're in Panama. They are in Northern Europe. They are in the Middle East. They are in Southeast Asia. Hong Kong, Singapore, Japan. Guess what,
Holy
guys?
crap.
This used
So that's why Singapore is wealthy because, yeah, because they are one of the offshore account hub, isn't it? Shit, man. He seems smart, but he's the same as Jordan Peterson, the broken clock. It correct twice a day. Okay, but 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 gang, at least we got something, guys. I mean, this kind of explanation and information, the way this is how I view how I look at things. At least there was somebody who explaining this, and I'm not saying that whatever he's saying is 100% true, and that's why I'm making a note here so that behind the scene I will go through very quickly and look and do some fact check on each thing that he said, and if the dots is connected and for some reason we can accept, but still it's still an assumption, but at least the thing that we can learn is we have an idea of how the world works, how the banks work, how the elites work, how the secret societies work. So and why do we need to understand this? That is the second question. Is because that so that we are not easily get manipulated by the media, by the elite people, by somebody who want to manipulate us and make us position ourselves at the wrong side of the history. At the end of the day, it's evil versus good. And that's the reason we have to do our due diligence to educate ourselves by at least if there are some figure that explain about this thing, just listen to them, but do not accept them blindly. Exactly like religion. If I'm a Muslim, or I'm a Christian, or I'm a Buddhist, I'm a Hindu, I'm a Jew. I mean, I will listen to all my whatever my imam, my pope, my church father were saying, but it's not that I accept them blindly. I will go back and reprocess and do some fact check. So because this is important for us guys, do not focus on him, focus on us. We need to try to understand. We need to really uh, waking up so that we can better position ourselves to protect our own wealth, to protect our own mind, so we don't get easily manipulated by the bad elites.
Used to be the former British Empire.
I'm sorry, I need to
Okay? So the
go
British
back.
Empire is still there. Well, they're in the Caribbean. Okay? They're in Panama. They are in Northern Europe. They are in the Middle East. They are in Southeast Asia. Hong Kong, Singapore, Japan. Guess what, guys? This used to be the former British Empire. Okay? So the British Empire is still around today. They transformed from one that is overt, and that uses military power in order to control the world, to one that is covert, that is secret, and that uses financial and legal means in order to control the world. Okay? And it's still the game that we play today. All right? Now, there's a question that someone asked me. Okay, it's a very good question. The question is this: if offshore financial centers like Hong Kong and Dubai are so profitable, and it's such easy money, why doesn't everyone do it, right? It's a good question, okay? And the logic is very simple. We know that gambling, prostitution, human trafficking, slavery, all profitable. Why doesn't everyone do it? Because it's immoral, okay? As a society, you need morality in order to create energy, openness, and cohesion, right? People want to feel as though they're part of something good, that we're striving for a higher cause. And if you're all about slavery or prostitution or gambling or money laundering, people won't feel good about themselves. In fact, their souls will become corrupted, okay? So the classic example is like Hong Kong, right? Have you guys been to Hong Kong? One of the wealthiest cities in the world, right? Lots and lots of skyscrapers. But guess what? The people there are disgusting. They're depraved, they're unethical, they're disgusting. There's actually no culture to the place. There's no morality to the place. It's actually disgusting, okay? I don't want to live there. And if you live there, guess what? Your soul is going to become corrupted. So this is almost, you would say this is a demonic system. This system is not only evil, but it facilitates evil. It is the work of Satan. Okay? But unfortunately, this is a system that we live in today. So even though everyone will say this system is demonic, it's really underpins the world today. Because if you think about it, okay, all this corrupt money from China, India, Malaysia, they go to these places, but then this money then goes where? It goes over to Australia to invest in real estate.
Oh my goodness, man.
Do you guys know what
I can't unsee this.
the biggest industry in Australia is? It's banking. Okay? Banking. Which means that Australia also engages in money laundering, but they clean it up so people aren't aware of this. Do you understand? The same thing happens in Canada as well. Canada, United States as well. So this entire world It's based on stealing from the third world and transferring this money to the first world. That's all it is, okay? It's not complicated. But this has led to a huge problem. The problem is what we call over-financialization. But over-financialization, it's a very similar concept where there's too much money, so people become corrupt.
Sorry, guys. Demand it goes to the state. Exactly, bro. Yes, I mean, yesterday I made another live stream. It covers about this, about the transfers of wealth is actually protected in the stock market in the US. I mean, I am ignorant, bro. I'm learning, but I'm learning so much from Prof. Jiang video. I mean, I'm what are you saying? I learned about that last night. There was my first live stream about like try to understand how the world works. But what you're saying is true, bro.
Lazy concept where there's too much, a huge problem. The problem is what we call over-financialization.
Oh, okay.
But over-financialization, it's a very similar concept where there's too much money, so people become corrupt, lazy, arrogant, and insular. And that's what's happening in Canada, in the United States, in Britain, in Australia. Okay? And so really, an empire must collapse at some point. So the British, the Western world, they are a victim of their own success. Okay? So they stole all this money from the rest of the world, but this money has made their people lazy, corrupt, and arrogant. And that's why we're seeing so much conflict right now in the Western world, because this money has created a lot of inequality in the world, in the Western world, right? Where maybe 1% of all the money, 9% have very little to get by on. But you also have a lot of corruption, where the political system no longer serves the interests of the people. They only serve the interests of the rich, okay? And then you also have immorality, where nowadays people only concerned about making money. They don't want to contribute to the community, okay? So yes, we can say that the Western world, it's evil because they've stolen all this money. But really what's happened is that they've corrupted and destroyed themselves because this model has been too successful for them, okay? And that's why we're seeing so much chaos in the world today. So we are really at a game reset, or a game's end. And a new game is about to emerge because this game right now is not sustainable. Okay? All right. Any questions?
Wow, there's a lot to check. There's a lot to check.
So
man.
if the success of Western world leads to the corruption and the fall of Western world, can we generalize that after success people will fall? Then what's the meaning of success?
Okay.
Okay, that's a great question, okay? So if we know that if you become successful, you will not be happy, why do people go and succeed? And, okay, this is a really hard question to answer, okay? So let me explain different layers. Okay, the first layer is this. Why people know that wealth doesn't lead to happiness, right? What leads to happiness is family, love, community, meaning, purpose, generosity, okay? That's what leads to happiness. The happiest people in the world tend to be religious, they tend to have families, and they tend to be very kind-hearted people. So why do you have rich people? Because the game is structured so that everyone is forced to play, okay? Meaning that we only care about people like Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos or Mark Zuckerberg. We worship the rich, okay? And we hate the poor. So if you're homeless, we think it's because you deserve it, because you're lazy. It's because you refuse to work, okay? So the game is set up so that we're focused on making money. Then the question then is, why do we have this stupid game? And the answer, unfortunately, is that what we figured out is that this game, in the short term, not in the long term, okay, we're talking like decades, not centuries. In the short term, it's what makes your people the most energetic, open, cohesive, and the most likely to win against other nation states. Okay, does that make sense? So in the long term, you get destroyed. Your people are destroyed. You're corrupted by this game. But in the short term, it allows you to defeat other players. Okay, that's how the British were able to create the empire, because they defeated the French, then they defeat the Germans, then they defeat the Russians. Okay, and that forces the other players to play this game as well, because in the short term, this game gives you huge advantages. Okay, so think of it's a zero-sum game. So think of a Olympic game where, okay, everyone's going and competing in the 100-meter sprint. And we know you shouldn't do drugs because drugs will destroy your body, right? And you could have a heart attack when you're 40. But they're like, no, I really want to win this game. So one guy uses a drug and he wins. And the other players know about this, and now they're forced to also use the same tactic. Okay, do you understand? So it's a really unfortunate system in that this system can only lead to the unhappiness, corruption, and immorality of people. But people are too concerned about short-term rewards. Okay, if you don't play this game, then you get eliminated. Okay, what I will discuss in the next class, okay, is the American Empire and how the American Empire changed this game.
American
Right? So
Empire.
what the
Yeah,
American
that's
Empire will do
interesting.
is they will add US dollars to this game. And it's important because it makes the game universal now, as well as easier to play. Okay? And then we'll look at how the system, capitalism, conquered the world. Okay? So it's a great question.
That is pretty good
But the reality
video
is that
to watch
if you
next.
cheat, if you do bad things, in the short term you will win out. Even though in the long term it will lead to severe consequences for you and
They
your
call it
people.
karma then.
Okay? Does that make sense? Okay? I mean, and it's also the same thing as like, rich people, right? Rich people, to get rich, they will sacrifice their children's happiness. They will sacrifice their own happiness. But they think that this will lead to happiness in the future. It won't, but they believe it, okay? So that's the great tragedy of this game. Does that make
Great
sense?
tragedy.
Okay, good. Any more questions?
I have a question, but
Okay, good. So we'll continue this next class, okay?
wow. I don't know. I'm started. Um, well, there's a lot of notes. It goes to the state, to the stock market. They are imperialist state, and education is forgotten in those countries. They work with one another. The British Empire had allies and also helped conquer region that didn't belong to Europe. Look at the continent of Africa and straight line of borders. Gotcha. But I wanna add on to what he said at the end of the class when he said that wealth, sorry, by creating this system, uh, winning on a short term, then my question is, do is there an is there any like getting wealth in in a moral way uh in the world today? I mean, we can become rich but not doing immoral activities like such as money laundering or um prostitution, gambling, whatsoever, right? That's my question. So if the current financial system that we had today is a demonic system mentioned by Prof. Jiang, which is I agree to a certain extent. Um, so what's the solution? Is there a way that we can also get wealth and achieve freedom, um, but not doing bad things, for example? What are the answer to that? the question that I want to ask him actually. Um, but let's look up. Let's summarize pretty quickly. So basically, the video is about um, the World Bank, like how does it created, and it basically starting off with Spain, and Spain is a poor country, and most of the wealth, as he mentioned, is actually need to go through the Muslim continent, which is the Middle East, under the Muslim Empire. Assuming that the Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is already exists, which is at 632 AD, if I'm not mistaken. Um, and then, but because there are blockage from the Muslim Empire, so Spain have to go through, if I'm not mistaken, through to divert into the East India route. So to get spices, because back then there is no microchip as the medium transfer of wealth, but they need spices because there are no spices in Europe or Andalusia, so they need spices from the Southeast Asia or from India. So from there, they get their wealth by trading spices and silver, and then the Spain start to become rich uh, by trading silver, gold, and spices. But then they get lazy. So Spain get lazy. So I have a lot of wealth. So I have a lot of wealth, and I don't want to do this job anymore. I just want to lay back and drink my coffee, and I want other people to do this job for me. I'm good. So that's why they start to make pact with the British, with France, and one of their colonies, which is the Dutch, if I'm not mistaken. Right? Wait, do I write it? British, France, and Dutch. British. Okay. Yes. So, so these three country are helping them getting more wealth. So, but then the British and Dutch realized that why don't we steal this for ourselves instead of we work for the Spain. So that is when the famous what do you call it, Drake, Nathan Drake. No, that's from the game, right? So from the, so they start stealing. I mean, do piracy and stealing golds and silver and spices in the sea from the Spain ship. And then due to that, there are 30 years of war, and the British and Dutch uh, make pact and start a war with Spain, and they call it a 30 years of war, and it caused millions of casualty from that time, which is I didn't I'm not sure whether he mentioned what year is that, but it prolonged up until World War I. Okay, then the basically British and Dutch win the war, and now they have a lot of wealth. Okay, so when they have a lot of wealth, so um, they need to protect this wealth. So what the British said to the Dutch, like, let us protect the wealth and bring all your wealth to our country. So then so the Dutch will become one of the British monarch. And then the Bank of England was created by on 1694, and then the Bank of England will be guaranteed by the British Parliament, which is basically the members of the Parliament are usually one of the noble people, including the royals. And then the Bank of England is actually a pool of wealth, okay, a pools of wealth that they have plunder and they have like steal, and then this pool of wealth will use to borrow money even to the king and to the nation. So the merchant need to use this currency, need to buy the currency from the Bank of England, if that how I understood. And then even though to those who have made loan with the Bank of England and they die before finishing up their debt, there always other people that need that will pay. For example, if the kings have loaned money from the Bank of England, maybe for wars and everything, just like Trump did today, by the approval of billions of money by the Congress. Then suddenly Iran and U.S. war started, and that's okay. Let's not go into that. So, but even though the king died and the debt was not fulfilled completely, was not paid fully by the king, but the nation will have to pay on behalf of the king, or the king's debt on behalf of the king, and that's pretty f up. Okay, so and then moving forward, British start to mention to the British created secret societies, a Freemason, intermarriage within the noble people, and then they are a term called contract law by John Law, is to protect life, private property through Parliament and court system of the British. And then the wealthy people in Europe start to invest in England because the England promised them that we will protect your wealth regardless of where your wealth are located. If it's in China, then we will protect. If somebody tried to take your property or in China, for example, then we will send our navy and ship and troops and whatever to fight with the people who try to take your property or your wealth, whatever that you have in that particular country. So with that promises, they start to invest more in a British system, and they call it the OFC, offshore financial system, which is currently is actually, for example, like in Dubai and Switzerland and Singapore and Canada and Australia. That's what Prof. Jang is mentioned. And then Napoleon. I don't know much about Napoleon. Maybe I hope that Prof. Jang covers about Napoleon. Napoleon wanted to conquer Europe. I'm not sure whether how the origins of Napoleon, because I'm not really educated in history, and they have fought war with the England, and England won the war on the Seventh War, and the empire and the British Empire began. So the reason why it called begin is because there are no more competitors. So the Napoleon destroyed, Spain destroyed, and now we are the big world supremacy at that time. And yes, at that time, not today, at that time. And then they begin to create East India Company, and so that they can keep trading spices, which is the transfer of wealth. Uh, and then British deindustrialize and bankrupt India, transfer the wealth to England, and then British. This one is funny. And British creates an economy where British give $10 to India. Okay, we give you $10. I mean, in term of trade, but then but in return, we want to take $1,000. I'm not sure exactly how that works, but it sounds funny to me. If I need to dig that up, what it really means by British give $10 to India and British take 1,000. I think it is in term of import transport, in term of tax or duty or duty tax cost, whatever. I'm not sure about that. I will do my due diligence to study on that behind the scene. And British apply the same to China, but this haven't been elaborated that much. And the England wealth and then once England have acquired a lot of wealth, and then it transferred to the US, and it makes sense. That's why US is the central point of economy of the world for years and years, and it makes sense, which is in the stock market. And then the local elite, the local elite in other country will help British steal wealth from India and China. I think the local elite in this was actually specifically in India and China, and the local elite make pact with the British Empire to transfer gold or to steal gold, to move gold from India and China to the British. But then British will promise to migrate them to British Empire to have a better life and better status, and to protect them. And then due to that wealth, again, British will use that wealth to launder the wealth by maybe creating some coffee shop or whatever business that they could. But then because of the wealth that I spoke earlier, that because of the wealth is too big, that they have to step up the game by starting cleaning up, which is money laundering the wealth into bigger things like real estate and blah blah blah, and then they start, due to that, people will realize and they start creating school. The purpose, the intention, the niyyah to create school is to, based on what Prof Jiang was said, is to brainwash the people, teach about the supremacy of British people, and taught them about Shakespeare, taught them about English as the supreme language of the world, and definitely going to teach about the British was superior in terms of they have been conquer and win a war and this and that, by telling them that we have the greatest navy in the world, blah blah blah. And then through years and time, the whole world start to like subconsciously accept that the British was actually supreme, and they automatically feel fear and respect when they see white people and long nose that comes to their country, or maybe when they go to another country, and it creates arrogance inside the British people as well, to look down on other people. And this is like totally demonic situation in my point of view, and a racism in that sense. And this is how the British conquer the world, both by plundering, both by military, both by killing millions of people, stealing, money laundering, and brainwashing people, maybe to the extent of writing a rewriting history for some reason. Um, and then coming back that these wealth will transfer into the America, and then for a very subtle section that Prof Jiang mentioned, that at 2015 and 2019 there was a huge drug trade, which is mainly with cocaine, and then this is going to be the new transfer of wealth, because previously were spices, okay, spices and trading on the sea route, but by 2015 2019 the transfer of wealth is mostly via cocaine drug. And then he mentioned that the illegal trade is protected actually by the legal financial system, and that's the reason why offshore account were created in, for example, like he mentioned, in Canada, in Australia, in Singapore, in Panama. Yeah, I did mention Caribbean, Panama, Northern Europe, Middle East, Southeast Asia, Japan, because these are the former British Empire and still today, and that's why most of these offshore accounts were created in these listed country, is to protect these legal offshore financial institution, is to protect the illegal drug money. And if offshore account is profitable, why all countries are not doing it? And that makes sense is because the offshore account in this listed country is actually a former British Empire pack. And again, the transfer of wealth is mostly due to prostitution, gambling, and money. And these are the things that people truly desired, like prostitution, sex, and gambling. This instill this feeling is try to get wealth as quick as possible, and people are like having this hope, by if I can throw these dice and hope that I can get a million tonight. And they are manipulating this desires towards the subjects, which is the people. And money laundering, again, the stolen money that need to be clean, because if they do not do this, they do not clean this money, then the people will realize, the people of the nation will realize, and people of the nation will question why the government aren't doing anything to this certain group of people, secret societies, Freemason. That's why they need to have a legal financial constitution to actually clean the illegal stolen wealth. And then Hong Kong, for example, if I'm not mistaken, Hong Kong is one of the British colony, due to, because they have to clean this bad money. That due to that, I would say in this context that God has sentenced them that they have no soul. that because the source of wealth is corrupted, which is again in Islam we call it kifara. In Hindus they call it this term karma. Okay, you do bad things, you do bad things back. You do good things, you do good things back. Okay, offshore account facilitates by evil, the devil system, demonic, and Australia is biggest industry is banking. Canada as well, mentioned earlier. Concept of stealing wealth from the third world country is transferred to the first world country. This is another good sentence and keyword that is actually the third world country that they labelize today is actually rich in wealth, but then they label themselves as the first world country uh, because they're able to reindustrialize and make their country better in terms of a schooling system, in terms of road system, in terms of water system, food system, but actually this was funded by the wealth coming from the third world country, and this is like really sad. And over financialization, and this is the problem because of their bad deeds that they have done years before, and they have over financialization, and they start to become arrogant, they start to become lazy, they don't want to fight, they start to feel self privilege. That's why they are for me in that sense they this to a point that they start to want to fight for this LGBTQ, where we don't want to be called as man, we want to be called as cat. They start to become arrogant, all right. And it happens in Canada, Australia, Britain. The British Empire is collapsing due to people lazy and arrogant, to create inequality and corruption, and because the government served the interest only for the rich people, not for the poor. And because of that, the empire is corrupted and destroy themselves. And next, I will find is there a video about America, and the next empire which is about to fall is the American Empire. And I hope you guys are enjoying learning this together with me. And let me read a few comments. The British Empire had allies and also helped conquer regions that didn't belong to Europe to get the continent of Africa in a straight line of borders. Honestly, we don't have to do bad things in order for all of us to benefit. Just think of the concept of billionaire Mark Zuckerberg himself literally buy Poland and give everyone 10 grand. Yeah, that's one way to look at it. Okay, guys, I think that's about it on this live stream. And again, guys, for the intention of my if of me doing this is that I'm going to start learning about how the world works. And I mean, I I noticed that a lot of YouTubers are like giving advice and motivation on how to become rich, and you have to invest in property, and you have to invest in stock market. But I think the bigger picture is more important, because the stock market, the real estate, saving money, cryptocurrency, these are all noise, I would say. But if we really understand like the source of wealth, like how the system really work, how the banks really work, how money really work, I think that is the most important knowledge that we need to have, so that we can make a better decision throughout um, how do I say I mean we able to make a better decision to achieve wealth. That's what I'm trying to say, because there's no point if YouTuber keeps saying that okay, you need to buy real estate because it gain capital appreciation 2 years and you can have passive income through rental. But actually, what happens? The bigger picture, that the true wealthy people is actually laundering their money and putting into real estate, and they have no issue if the real estate price spike. The bad wealthy people, they even love if the price of property spike, because they need to clean up this money that they stole. So, but for us who want to earn wealth through honest way, it is bad for us. The property price keeps spike up. Um, so I want us together, we waking up and start to understand, so that we can make a better decision, and most importantly, not easily get manipulated by the media. That's the true intention of me doing this live stream. Okay, guys, see you guys in the next topic. I'll see you soon. Ciao.